Benedicite Dominus. Welcome to question 157 of the Secunda Secundae. The topic for this lecture is Clemency and Meekness, and I am Dr. Thibault. We are looking at the potential parts of the cardinal virtue of temperance. This is the second of the potential parts. We looked at continency and incontinency, which I had a hard time saying, so clemency and meekness is a nice welcome, and a nice short one too, only 4 articles. And some of the questions, like continency, was kind of a thick one to get through to really understand all of what he was saying, versus clemency and meekness is like a cool breeze compared to the previous one. So this will go pretty quickly. So clemency and meekness, the first question is, are they the same thing? And St. Thomas says, no, they are not the same thing. Moral virtues are about passions and actions, which is a nice little definition there. He took it from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Internal passions are the principles of external actions. It's a great line. Internal passions are principles of external actions. Now, clemency and meekness, I already see a mistake in here, but clemency is about the external, and should say meekness, not anger. Meekness is in the internal. So clemency moderates external punishments, and anger, and meekness moderates the passion of anger. So they do 2 different things. One of them is dealing with your internal anger, and the other one is dealing with external punishments. Now, we can't only think of punishments as in the court system, right? We hear that word clemency from a legal system, right, in a legal term. But this isn't in the section of justice. This isn't under the legal section of the virtues, which you'll find in justice. This is within your own personal life. So how willing are you to moderate your punishment on other people? Right? This is, you're waiting at line and somebody does something rude and you get angry internally. What will be our external punishment for that person? Are we going to give them a dirty look? Are we going to scowl at them? Are we going to say something? Are we going to get violent? Right? All of these external punishments deal with clemency. And the anger part is the internal part, the hatred that we might have on the inside. Right? So they go together. That's why these are combined in question 157, and why they're combined as potential parts of temperance. Because, if they were completely separate and worthy of their own questions, St. Thomas would have done that, but he doesn't. So clemency and meekness are virtues. They are moral virtues, and the goal of them is to subject the appetites to reason. Right? It's to hold the appetites in check, because out of check our anger might burn into hatred. Right? Out of check our desire for revenge would be out of control, and there's no holding back what we would do. Clemency and meekness moderates that. It takes it down a notch, right? Not so that it doesn't exist, but that they operate according to reason. Reason is what is important. A person cuts in front of you in line, and it's going to take an extra 3 minutes for you to get through the line. Right? Reason wouldn't require you to boil over in anger over 3 minutes. Right? It's the proper balancing act of what is the appropriate way to respond in these situations, both internally and externally. And they're not opposed to one another because they are 2 elements. They are very closely related, right? The internal and the external, but they're not the same thing. So they're not contradictory to each other. So considering the parts of temperance, what are they a part of temperance? So what are the alternatives? Well, are they parts of the faith, hope, and love, the theological virtues? Well, no, they're not part of faith, hope, and love. Are they part of the intellectual virtue of prudence? No, because they are moral virtues. So when we get down to the moral virtues, we have justice, fortitude, and temperance. So where do they fit? Clemency and meekness. Well, justice deals with equality. Not really dealing with equality here. The next one would be fortitude, which deals with strength. Again, some of these, they relate to everything in a general way, but not specifically. Temperance deals with certain restraints, right? Restraining our appetites. Well, this one, St. Thomas would say, this one more aptly applies, because what might happen with anger, it might explode, right? Internally explode. We have to moderate those. We have to have restraint. Clemency, the desire for revenge. Clemency calms down the desire for revenge. It's restraint. So in that way, it is more closely part of temperance. So are clemency and meekness the greatest of the virtues? Well, they are great virtues, but they are not the greatest of virtues. So faith, hope, and love, they deal with issues of salvation and issues of God himself. Love is the greatest of virtues, so they don't compete with the greatest of virtues. Now, also in terms of the four cardinal virtues, temperance is the lowest of the virtues. So for a part of temperance, it's going to be usually lower. Now, these are usually spiritual are above cardinal virtues. These are now moving back into the spiritual. These are spiritual elements of a cardinal, often a cardinal moderation within temperance. Things like anger, we're not talking about carnal in a strict sense, and clemency, the calming of the desire for revenge. These are spiritual matters. So now this is raising it up a bit. They are excellent, really, among a lot of virtues, because they resist evil inclinations, right? He who hates his brother is a murderer, right? To cool anger is a big deal, right? And to not seek revenge, but seek forgiveness, right? These are elements that are at the heart of the gospel. So they're pretty important, right? They are pretty important. Not higher than love or higher than faith, but they're really important. St. Thomas has a great line that says, meekness and clemency make us acceptable to God and men insofar as they concur with charity. So when you have charity and meekness and clemency, you have one of the greatest of the commandments, right? Because what does that do? When we have meekness and clemency with love, with charity, it mitigates our neighbor's evils. And if you recall back from the cardinal virtue of justice, a lot of justice was about mitigating our neighbor's evils, right? You do have to worry about yourself, but you want to also worry about your neighbor. And this is a big part of that. So, forgiving your neighbor and not hating your neighbor, forgiving freely and openly, right? These are very important parts of the spiritual and life of virtue. So in conclusion, this was, again, very fun and easy, light one. Clemency and meekness are separate virtues, although related. They are both virtues in and of themselves, because they seek the good. They strive for the excellent. They are part of temperance. All right, they moderate the passions. They moderate excess and put it into proportion, especially excesses of emotion. They are also very important virtues, although they are not the greatest of virtues. Stick them in together with charity, and you got something really great, though. Next, we will be moving on to anger, which is a much longer section.